Honourable Member for Ialibu-Pangia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Treasurer for his statement to Parliament. The statement is a very good one. Soon we will be all living in paradise. Everything will be okay. So let me say this by...
Honourable Member, sorry. Can you move to take the note first before you proceed with your
I
debate?
move that Parliament take note and debate resume, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. You may continue.
As I was saying earlier, Mr. Speaker, this is a second statement in less than 2 weeks on an economy by a treasurer in this Parliament. I have been around here for over 20 years, and I've never seen this before. Obviously, there are some challenges in our economy, and I think the treasurer has noted that. But to take things lightly, and for me, I don't mind being insulted and intimidated and arrested and all those things, because I'm a public figure. But you can never silence me, Mr. Speaker, as long as I enjoy the mandate of my people. And I will speak for them. And Mr. Speaker, speaking about the economic data before us, since the good member for TVWAN and Treasurer was in opposition, he has been rewriting the numbers to suit his argument for a while. He ignores the numbers that are presented by the official government agencies. Bank of Papua New Guinea, National Statistical Office, all the other agencies, even independent studies. So I don't mind him continuously presenting numbers that suits his argument. That is his business, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I did not interrupt him when he was insulting me. Why can't he just shut up and sit down?
For Ialibu-Pangia,
Let someone speak.
There's a point of order. What's your point of order, Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My point of order is to the allegation by the honourable member that I have not been using data from credible sources, but it's been clear, Mr. Speaker, from delivering nearly 14 statements over 3.5 years that I've always referred to the central bank data, Department of Treasury, the National Statistics Office, and even our multilateral partners. I'm surprised that the honourable member suggests that those sources are not credible and that they're not accepted by himself or myself. So I would ask if he could retract that statement for fear that he might be insulting himself. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I think we must be reading two different reports. I'm reading the same reports and numbers you are presenting are not correct. And I've got a summary of all the numbers here with me. I can give it to you. And you can read it at your leisure when you're having lunch. But Mr. Speaker, let us say that, you have your position and I have mine. But Mr. Speaker, we know that the economy is growing, or the GDP is growing. And that's largely due to the boom in the resource commodity prices that we are enjoying today. It's got nothing to do with the treasurer's performance. Absolutely nothing. These commodity prices are a reflection of what is happening outside the global economy. Gold, copper, LNG prices are at record levels today. But Mr. Speaker, the growth of GDP does not mean that there is prosperity for everyone in this country. And that is a fact, Mr. Speaker. Instead of focusing on the issues that are before us, the treasurer comes here and makes a grandiose political statements. But Mr. Speaker, let me say this, forget about insults and everything else, but focus on a few things. And I'll be very constructive. Focus on the issue about cost of living in this country, Mr. Speaker. And let me tell you what cost of living means if the treasurer does not know. That is the price of goods and services that is affecting every family in this country. And its affordability, Mr. Speaker. If you have not been to the shops lately, please try go shopping once in a while. You will see the real struggles families are going through. The second issue about living standards in this country that you just eloquently presented is about access to infrastructure. And I'm pleased to know that the government is continuing some of the work that we have started on building roads, building ports, building airports. These are things that will improve the living standards of our people. Try and focus on those. And the third issue, Mr. Speaker, is access to reliable, quality health and education. These are challenges that people are facing today. Access to quality health and education. That improves living standards of individuals and families right across the country. And the fourth issue, Mr. Speaker, is about peaceful society. Address law and order. Address law and order which is not getting out of hand in this country. Those are things that will improve living standards of people. When they are living in peace, they're enjoying good health and education. When the prices of goods are down. Those are things that the minister should be focusing on. I can tell you, Minister, 90% of the population don't believe in what you're saying.
Mr. Member from Ialibu-Pangia, you address it to me, not direct to the minister.
Because of the reality that they are facing every day. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to be careful on what we do and what we say in this honorable house. And, Mr. Speaker, let me also add to the fact about the job numbers. Fortunately, I went through the National Statistical Office that you went through yesterday and saw the numbers. In 2014, the unemployed was 2.6%. In 2016, the rate of unemployment was 2.5%. 2018, it was 2.4%. In 2020, it went up to 2.7%. And of course, 2022-23, they're expecting it to be at 2.8%. Those are the numbers that your departments are producing. I don't know which page that you are reading from about job losses and things. We are familiar with the unemployed people because if you got the real numbers from people like Nest Fund or Number One Super, they will tell you how many people are being put out of job. And the growth of jobs that you are talking today, nobody sees it. Nobody's feeling it. People have no income. And that's what they want you to take leadership about. And when you talk about creation of jobs in the manufacturing sector, yes, we know. You met with the Manufacturing Council and you posted a lovely picture. Of course, some of them are your relatives. Some of their businesses might be able to, of course, have some growth. But the rest of the industry is suffering. As far as we know, there are cuts all the time. We've seen the front pages of the newspapers. I don't have to explain to this House and the Treasurer. But reality is that people are losing jobs everywhere. Only place there is steady in jobs is government because we are protecting it. So we should. And of course, Mr. Speaker, if the good Treasurer had cared to look to the reports by, even independent report by National Research Institute, and they did a sample survey in Port Moresby, and they said that almost 68% of the young population from age 14 to, I think, 35 are out of jobs. These are grade 8, grade 10, grade 12 school leavers, some university dropouts, some skilled workforce that are not able to find jobs. And here you are telling the parliament that jobs are available and people are getting jobs, but they are not seeing it. So, Mr. Speaker, I think, we need to be honest about what we are saying to our people. We need to be honest. It's not about political point scoring in here. Treasurer need to stop. You need to put your own mark on the economy in this country and let people judge you. Don't judge it that you are doing all these wonderful jobs yourself. Let the people judge you that you are doing the right thing. I think the only person who believes in you is your Prime Minister. But that's fine. We know that you two are working together in trying to rescue our economy. But let's do the right thing. Let's focus on a few things. Let's focus on cost of living. Let's try and get inflation under control. Let's try and promote more jobs by making sure that we have a conducive business environment. If you look through and you can name me, I may be wrong, Mr. Speaker, I may be wrong. But tell me, over the last 3 or 4 years, apart from Total, what was the last foreign direct investment announced in this country? I know there were some 100 billion and 40 billion projects announced somewhere in Morobe and Eastern Islands and a few other places. But those announcements have come to nothing. These are sort of investments that create jobs, Mr. Speaker. So stop talking and let's get some of these projects off the ground. Total off the ground, or Papua LNG off the ground, which you are doing, and we support that. That'll create thousands of jobs for Papua New Guineans. Try and get WAFI off the ground. That has been on discussion table for the last 6, 7 years. Let's try and get, of course, Pasca and Penyang, and especially Pogra off the ground. Pogra, we have lost almost 3 billion kina, a billion kina a year in revenue for the state. 3 billion kina in the last 3 years. That's the money that you are now borrowing from IMF. You don't have to go to IMF if you had kept Pogra going. But stop setting dates that we cannot afford to meet, giving people false expectations. Papua New Guineans, thousands, over 3,000 or 4,000, I think Papua New Guineans lost their jobs there. Countless of SMEs, truckies, contractors, subcontractors, now the landowners who are not receiving any benefits. It's because we have not handled this transaction well. So let's get it, stop talking and let's get it off the ground, give it priority. And I think, you will find jobs in those sectors. Let's get agriculture moving, tourism moving, fisheries moving. And I think, our country can be back on track. But we are at a stage of very crucial stage, and I'm warning our parliament and, of course, our country. We have a very boom stage in our resource sector today. Just like we did, and I agree that during, of course, Chief Sir Michael Sumara's time, we enjoyed some boom. We had, in fact, surplus budgets and we had surplus money in the bank account, about 6 billion. But how we spend that is another story. But I want to say that today we are enjoying prices. We need to save for the future. Some of the bonuses windfall that we are receiving, we have to save for the future. What you are doing today by borrowing from IMF is that very simple. IMF, the Treasurer and I will disagree on this forever, but let me say this. I did not say that IMF did not lend to other people. Of course, during COVID, IMF lent to close to 100 people. But IMF did only lend to 3 countries, and you are the third one on budget support. That's called bailout. You can't rewrite things. During COVID, of course, IMF was obligated. IMF was obligated to support countries around the world. IMF's charter is very clear. They come in and intervene when countries have balance of payments issues and there's stress in the economy. That's when they intervene. That's their charter. And, Mr. Speaker, the Treasurer should inform this House and the country that we have been under what they call staff monitoring program for almost over a year. IMF has an office here in PNG already. They have staff monitoring your performance, Treasurer. I was up late last night reading the IMF's press release from Washington last night like you did. And let me refer, I quote one of the references that they made. It's not because you went and did some good work there that they lend you the money. They are saying this, and I quote, building on the progress under staff monitoring programs in PNG. And they're urging the authorities, that's you, Treasurer, the need to accelerate structural reform programs. And I quote, you read the statement properly. That's what they're lending you the money. You are not telling us the conditions in which you are borrowing this money. They're asking about reforms in central bank, reforms in public sector, strengthen ICAC, and of course, reforms in the overall monetary fiscal policy. You have to inform the nation these reforms that are coming through. Not just flowery statements saying that everything will be all right. We've gone through structural reform programs with IMF before. We know the experience we've had. We are not the only ones, but Mr. Speaker, everywhere around the country. Mr. Speaker, one of the other reasons why our economy is not performing is because government departments are not receiving the funds that you have budgeted for, Treasurer. Mr. Speaker, because for the first time in the history of our country, the day-to-day issuance of warrants have been controlled by the Treasurer and under the supervision of IMF. The staff monitoring performance, you are signing all the documents.
Prime Minister.
For Ialibu's inference that IMF is controlling the Treasurer for the issuance of warrant, that is completely false. IMF has no direct oversight on day-to-day running of the programs of government as per what we budgeted. That is an assertion, that is an inference. Point of order doesn't allow for assertion and inference. He needs to withdraw this. Treasurer is working in a weekly program as defined by the Budget Management Committee that he chairs over, and a composite of ministers are in that committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the intervention by the Prime Minister is noted. I did not say that IMF is issuing the warrants. The structural reform programs that they are putting in place include reforms at Treasury. I'm saying the Treasury is now totally in control of issuing the warrants to the department. That's what I stated, which is a fact. Treasury has never, I've been a treasurer before. We don't go daily signing warrants on each individual warrant for each individual payment. That's the job of the secretary and all the other officials. A treasurer is performing those duties of what the officials should be doing. And because of that, funds are not moving faster to the departments and they are not able to operate. That's the reality that we are facing today. But the reforms are serious. I urge him to table the documents on the floor in the next sitting so Papua New Guineans can see the conditions in which IMF is lending this money to us. So, Mr. Speaker, I know that in conclusion, let me say this. I know that it's not going to be easy. And I want to commend some of the efforts that the government has done. That includes, since 2018-19, the revenue of our government revenue has gone up. But I commend two agencies of government, Customs and IRC. They have done an excellent job. And of course, our internal revenue has increased from 13 billion kina in 2019, now projected to be about 19.5 billion kina in 2020. While the revenue is increasing, Mr. Speaker, we're still borrowing big sums of money. to fund our budget, because our budget deficits are also increasing. That is because we are increasing our expenditure. This is a time when we need to control our expenditure, Mr. Speaker. Just because we've got surplus revenue does not necessarily mean that we continue to spend. Prices of commodities that go up will come down, will definitely come down. That will create serious problems for us. And Mr. Speaker, while the debt levels are going up, as Treasurer said, the ratios may be a bit different, but there's no argument that it is going up. And soon it will exceed 55% of GDP. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to rein in this. Creating new ministries is not going to help. It's just going to blow out your budget. Make the ministries that you have work, make them to work. These are kind of non-priority things that you need to delay. And when you have the funding, you can come in with a budget to support it. So, Mr. Speaker, all in all, let me say this. There are challenges in our economy. Our families are struggling. Our people are struggling. We in opposition want to support constructive things. But the Treasurer's statement certainly lacks that. Certainly lacks that. As I said, I've been around for a while. I've seen the Treasurer come to Parliament and leave. I'll be still here when he comes back. But I will keep on saying what is good for the people of this country, and our own people deserve a break. They deserve our Treasurer and our government to give them hope. Hope that everything will be okay. Everything tomorrow, they will have a meal on the table for their families. They will have an income when they get a job. That is what they want to hear. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to say a few words. Thanks.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. And to conclude the leader's comments on the IMF and to keep the discussions balanced and to correct his very wrongful comments about the IMF. Number one, the IMF that is here in the country today, Mr. Speaker, has established office here on the invitation of our government. On the invitation of our government. And finally, Mr. Speaker, to conclude and to keep balance and to correct his very selective comments of the IMF report, this same report that he has tabled today also says, and I quote, "The medium-term outlook is positive. There are good prospects of new investments in the resource sector, which would boost growth, exports, and fiscal revenue collection." Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to correct him again on the